She married the man they called poor. Little did she know his incredible secret was revealed. In the quaint town of Maplewood, where every eye followed each whispered love story, Sarah's heart raced like the stirring wind on a cotton-picking day. Mark, the soft-spoken mechanic with a heart as big as the skies above, transformed her ordinary world into something magical. How could a man, labeled poor by the townsfolk, possess such a rich spirit? Love had woven its tendrils around their hearts, igniting in her a yearning she didn't know existed. But the whispers grew louder. Her parents, immersed in old-fashioned values and expectations, wanted better for their daughter. As she walked hand in hand with Mark, her pulse quickened. His easy laughter danced through the crisp autumn air, each chuckle echoing like a sweet promise. When he brought her daisies, plucked lovingly from the roadside, her heart swelled. They'd sit on a rickety bench, sharing their dreams beneath the tapestry of stars. But then, she glimpsed the calculating eyes of neighbors peering with shaky judgment, their eyebrows arched as if they could read her heart like an open book. "Why are you with him?" someone would hiss in passing. "He has nothing." Under the weight of their criticism, Sarah felt the tug of loyalty to her family, the pressure of expectations pressing down on her like the heavy weight of a world that saw only dollars and cents. "Oh, the town is too small for love sometimes," Mark would say softly, brushing her hair behind her ear. But insecurities blossomed within him, each doubt flickering like shadows cast by the fading sun. He worked long hours, his weary clothes stained by grease and grit, as if the weight of the world rested on his tired shoulders. Then came Jake, Mark's estranged brother, newly returned from a deployment, a decorated hero grappling with his aftermath. He wore a broken smile, haunted eyes speaking volumes. In moments of desperation, Jake found solace in Mark's rough embrace, their brotherly bond tethered by unspoken fears and anxiety of finding their footing. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. As fall turned to winter, Mark's secret began to tug at the fabric of their love. He was not the man they claimed him to be. There was an unexpected inheritance waiting to intertwine with his rough exterior. A family legacy built on years of giving back to the community, a hidden truth that threatened to upend their tender connection. Would Sarah judge him through the lens of Maplewood's narrow views? Or would she see Mark for who he truly was? Tension hung in the air like a pendulum, swinging between acceptance and rejection. That uncertainty gnawed at her heart. Could she dare to love him beyond the labels cast by those who should stand as friends? With Mark's brother now present, Sarah felt the cracks spreading, the weight of doubt mingling with her relentless desire to embrace what her heart felt. As secrets unraveled and love faced its fiercest test, Sarah stood on the edge of a decision that could redefine everything. Would she choose to see the real Mark beyond the judgments of Maplewood, or would love be another casualty of societal acceptance? The real journey was just beginning, leaving hearts fluttering and minds racing, wondering how they could break through the chasm of expectations to find the power of love's resilience. As winter settled over Maplewood, its icy grip brought silvery frost to window panes and whispered secrets through the skeletal trees. Sarah could feel the chill deep in her bones, but it wasn't just the cold that made her shiver. Doubt coiled around her heart, tightening with each passing day. Mark had become distant, his laughter once a warm comfort now felt strained, as if the weight of the truth he carried was settling heavily like a fog over his spirit. He worked late hours at the garage, often returning home with a tired smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. That flicker of insecurity was back, shadowing him with every glance. It broke her heart to see him retreat into himself, harboring secrets while she stood longing to bridge the space between them. One evening, as Sarah prepared dinner, she caught sight of Jake through the kitchen window, his figure silhouetted against the white of the snow. He appeared lost, wandering the yard like a man searching for something he couldn't quite find. The brothers had always shared a bond, but now it seemed more fragile than ever. She knew Jake carried his own burdens, shadows left behind by war, but she couldn't help but wonder if an unspoken brotherly loyalty was preventing Mark from confiding in her. "Mark, can we talk?" she asked cautiously, her voice trembling with hope. He looked away, unsure, and then nodded slowly, his brows furrowing in thought. They sat on their old bench, the freezing air wrapping around them, and for a moment, silence hung heavy. The stakes felt higher now. She needed him to trust her with whatever haunted him, but how could she make him see that her love was strong enough to handle the truth? "Sarah," he began hesitantly, "there is something you should know. Something about my family." Her heart raced, a mix of fear and anticipation coursing through her. "Go on," she urged, her voice steady despite the storm inside her chest. "I'm not who you think I am," he revealed, his eyes clouded with uncertainty. "My family. They've built this legacy. It's not just money, it's about helping others. I didn't want to burden you with it. I wanted you to love me for me." Every word felt like a soft blow, both freeing and confining. She could hear the echoes of Maplewood's whispers returning, stinging her like the cold. "Mark, I love you, not your past or your family's story. But why didn't you tell me?" His gaze dropped, shame casting a shadow across his handsome features. "I didn't want you to see me differently. I wanted to be just Mark, the mechanic, the guy who makes you laugh." She reached for his hand, intertwining her fingers with his. "You're still that man. Your heart is what I fell in love with." But before Mark could respond with the reassurance she craved, Jake interrupted them, nearly out of breath, pacing towards them. "You have to see this," he exclaimed, panic in his voice, as snowflakes tumbled around him. "What is it?" Sarah asked sharply, concern replacing tenderness. Jake's expression morphed from urgency to alarm. "It's about the old barn, the fire, people saw." Sarah's heart plummeted. What could be happening now, threatening the fragile balance they'd been trying to navigate? Mark's grip tightened on her hand as they both turned to Jake, uncertainty looming. "Are they okay? The community?" Mark asked, his voice suddenly firm. Jake shook his head, an unsettling gravity to his demeanor that sent chills up her spine. "What if this changes everything?" Sarah whispered, fear rippling through her. As they hurried towards the commotion, Sarah couldn't shake the sensation that secrets were about to unravel more than she ever imagined. Would the truth bring them closer together or tear their world apart? Everything was at stake, never more than it was at this moment. "The truth is closer than you think," Jake murmured as they reached the commotion, setting the stage for what was about to surface. Sarah's heart pounded as she braced for the uncertainty ahead, standing at the precipice of revelations that could change everything. What had she yet to discover about the man she loved? The scene was chaos. Smoke billowed from the barn, dark and thick against the bright white of the snow. The sky seemed to darken with it, casting a gloomy veil over Maplewood. Sarah's heart raced as they approached, her instincts screaming that this was more than just a fire. She could feel the tension radiating off Mark, it mingled with her own worry. "Stay close," Mark instructed, his expression hardening with focus. Sarah squeezed his hand tighter, drawing strength from his touch. They pushed through a growing crowd, faces filled with shock and fear, people huddled together, murmuring doubts and fears. "What happened?" Sarah asked a woman she recognized from the farmer's market. The woman's eyes were wide, glistening with unshed tears. "It just caught fire. Someone said it was an accident," but she paused, biting her lip. "It looks bad, really bad." Mark turned away, his jaw clenched tight. Sarah could see he was already slipping into his protective mode, a wall he held up to shield her from whatever storm brewed inside him. It unnerved her. "And the community? Is anyone hurt?" Sarah pressed, searching the crowd's faces for any sign of familiarity, any reassurance that everything would be all right. "Not that I know of," the woman said, shaking her head. But they say the barn held a lot of memories. It could change everything. The weight of those words sank deep into Sarah's chest. The barn wasn't just wood and hay, it was where the community gathered, where stories were shared. It was a part of the fabric that held Maplewood together. If it fell to ashes, what would remain? As they neared the broken remnants of heavy beams, Jake pointed toward a small group of men trying to contain the fire. "That's the old barn where Dad used to hold the markets. He loved this place," he said, his voice tinged with a mix of nostalgia and fear. "If this goes, it's like losing a piece of home." Mark's eyes searched the flames, then flicked to Jake. "We need to help them," he said, determination flooding his tone. Sarah could feel the urgency in him as he dropped her hand to rush forward. Leaving her behind felt like a mistake, but she was rooted to the spot, watching them scramble, desperate to fight something that felt both out of reach and painfully close. In those moments, Sarah couldn't shake the haunting thought of Mark's earlier words. "I'm not who you think I am." What if this fire was connected to his hidden past? Just as she made this connection, a familiar voice broke through her racing thoughts. "Sarah! Come here." It was Dan, another neighbor, waving her over. His face was flushed, eyes wide. "What is it?" She didn't move at first, rooted in the responsibility to keep an eye on Mark. "Just come, you need to see this." Against her better judgment, she reluctantly left the edge of the crowd, pushing through the throng until she reached Dan. He looked grave as he leaned in closer. "There are people talking about how this might have been started on purpose." Those words hit her like a heavy drumbeat in her chest. Someone had set the fire. What? Who would do that? She gasped, the question ricocheting through her mind, her breath quickening. Just then, a loud crack echoed, and a beam collapsed, sending a new wave of smoke into the air. People screamed, pulling back in shock. It felt as if the whole town held its breath. Mark caught sight of her, his face a mask of worry, and his eyes locked onto hers. "Sarah!" He called out, his voice barely audible over the din, but even from a distance, she could see the fear etched into his features. Uncertainty gripped her heart. What was happening? She wanted to run back to him, but the detective in Dan wasn't giving up. "We have to find out who did this," he insisted, his voice low but urgent. "It could change everything for your community and for Mark." Dread pooled in her stomach. Nothing felt certain anymore. As chaos unfolded, one question echoed in her mind: what did this fire really mean for their future? "Sarah!" Mark called again, panic rising as he caught her eye, and she knew something would change in a heartbeat. The truth was creeping closer, but how devastating would it be when it finally arrived? The flames danced wildly, ominously licking through the charred beams of the barn, consumed by their own greedy hunger. Sarah stood frozen in the swirling confusion, the air thick with smoke and uncertainty. Mark's voice rang in her ears, but the chaos around her dulled her senses. She felt the world moving like a dream, everything surreal, almost like a film playing out before her. A crowd surged, people bustling, stories breaking, but all Sarah could think of was the look on Mark's face, twisted with fear. It wasn't just the barn that felt threatened, it was everything they had built together. "Sarah, come on." Dan's voice pulled her from the haze. He grabbed her hand, urgency slipping into his tone like a jagged edge. "We have to figure this out." She nodded but felt lost. Dan pulled her toward a small group huddled beneath a tree, their faces illuminated by sporadic flashes of orange from the fire. "Look," he said, gesturing at the murmuring crowd. Sarah strained to hear, her eyes wide as she focused on two men talking heatedly. "They say it was an act of sabotage, something political," one man said, shaking his head. "Why would anyone do that?" Another voice chimed in, filled with disbelief. Her heart raced. Political? This wasn't just a barn, it was a community hub, a symbol of unity, and now, it was under attack. "This can't be happening," she whispered, a tremor of fear in her voice. "Exactly," Dan said, keeping his voice low. And if it's connected to Mark, we need to know what he is hiding. Before she could respond, distant sirens wailed, the sound slicing through the thick cloud of tension wrapping around them. A fire truck appeared, its flashing lights casting stark shadows against the white snow. The sight brought a flicker of relief, but it was quickly overshadowed by the grim reality that still held her captive. "Stay here," Dan urged as he moved off to speak with someone from the fire team, leaving Sarah alone and lost in her thoughts. She turned her gaze back to the flames, and her mind whirled. What if the fire was connected to Mark's secret? What if the truth about him was more dangerous than she'd ever imagined? She was pulled from her reverie when Mark rushed back through the crowd, his shirt smudged with soot and his hair tousled. "I was looking for you." His relief washed over her like a balm. "I'm right here." She took a step closer, those 3 words heavy with meaning. "The chaos could wait." "Did you hear what they're saying?" he asked, the urgency in his voice climbing. She nodded, unable to find her words. "About sabotage?" "That's what Dan thinks. What do you know?" She pressed, searching his expression, looking for a glimpse of the man she thought she knew. "It's complicated," Mark admitted, the weight of his confession sinking between them. "But we need to get to the bottom of this together." Just then, a cry erupted from the crowd. People gasped as they pointed toward the fire, where a figure emerged from the smoke. The silhouette was distorted, dancing against the flames, but it had the unmistakable stance of someone familiar. "Wait! That's Jake!" Sarah shouted, heart racing as she rushed past the crowd. "Jake, no!" Mark called after her, panic flaring. She spotted her friend stumbling through the haze, trying to pull something from the wreckage. "Jake!" She yelled his name, fright constricting her chest. As she got closer, she could see the determination in his eyes but also an element of desperation that sent shivers down her spine. "Don't move!" Mark shouted, reaching for her. But Sarah was already there, drawn to the urgency in Jake's every movement. "What are you doing?" She reached out, but he didn't turn. "I have to help," he cried, his voice hoarse. Panic twisted Sarah's stomach into knots. The whole situation spiraled out of control, and just as she opened her mouth to protest, flames roared higher, illuminating the truth that they could all be caught in the fire. Each choice they made now had consequences, and Sarah's heart raced as she realized more than just the barn was at stake. What awaited them on the other side of this? Tragedy. "Mark!" She shouted again, but his hand remained unyielding, anchoring her in a moment heavy with choice. Would they face the flames together, or would all their secrets burn away in the ashes? Jake's figure was barely visible now, swallowed by thick smoke and swirling embers. Sarah's breath caught as panic surged through her veins. What if he gets hurt? Mark stepped closer, his grip tightening. "We can't risk it. I know you want to help him, but it's too dangerous." "But he's my friend." Sarah's voice wavered, desperation clawing at her throat. "I know, but think, Sarah." Mark's eyes burned with intensity, revealing a side she hadn't seen before, like a crack of light breaking through darkness. "We need to figure out what is going on first. If this is sabotage, who knows what else is out there?" The crowd buzzed with fear and uncertainty, every face reflecting the flame's flickering light. A woman's voice rose above the clamor. "The fire department is here. They'll handle it." But Sarah stared at the chaos, torn between honoring her friend and her growing sense of dread. She glanced at Mark, searching for assurance. She found none, only a storm of emotions brewing in his deep-set eyes. The truth hung between them, almost tangible. "Jake!" She yelled again, but the flames cracked and hissed as if to drown her out. She pushed through the crowd, ignoring Mark's frantic calls. "Sarah, stop!" Mark's plea trailed after her, but she wouldn't turn back. A mix of fear and determination urged her forward. When she reached Jake, she saw him kneeling, desperately trying to lift a singed beam, smoke curling around him like a serpent. "Jake, what are you doing?" she gasped, coughing as the acrid smell stung her nose. "I'm trying to save something important," he panted, sweat glistening on his forehead. "I can't just leave it here. Just let it go." She could hear the frantic thud of her heart in her ears. "We can find it later, please." But Jake shook his head, his eyes wild. "If I don't do this now, it'll be lost forever. You don't understand." With a jolt of realization, she knew this was more than just a barn. Jake's life, their life here, all the community connections they had were at risk. What if everything they cherished slipped away in the ashes? "Jake, we can't afford to lose ourselves in the flames. We need to stick together, the whole town, together." Distressed, Jake hesitated, looking between Sarah and the wreckage. "But it's my dad's old tools. He'd want me to save them." A heavy silence fell between them. She remembered how important family was, how much they had built over the years. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed as another beam fell, and a hot gust of air surged past them. Jake stumbled back, nearly losing his balance. "Get out of here!" Mark's voice roared from behind them, breaking Sarah's momentary trance. He surged forward, pulling at Jake's arm. "There's no time." In that split second, Sarah felt the ground shudder beneath her feet, the world around them shifting dangerously. The flames seemed to rise higher, as if reaching for them, hungry and hungry still. "Let us go." Fear shot through her, and Jake finally nodded, letting Mark pull him away from the wreckage. Together, they stumbled back, the smoke tearing at their lungs. As they emerged into clearer air, Sarah turned to Jake, trembling, her heart racing. "What were you thinking, risking yourself like that?" I thought I had to save something of my dad's," he murmured, defeated, his voice trailing into silence. But before she could comfort him, a strange sound cut through the chaos. A low rumble that sent chills down her spine. "What was that?" Mark asked, looking over his shoulder, eyes wide. Then came the frantic cries from the crowd, escalating into panic as people began to scatter. "Everyone, run!" someone shouted. The barn creaked ominously, and Sarah felt the ground tremble again. It wasn't just the fire, it was a signal that things were about to change drastically, perhaps forever. "What's happening?" She turned to Mark, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know, but we have to get out of here." He took hold of her hand, urgency igniting a surge of adrenaline between them, but as they bolted away from the flames, leaving everything they knew behind, one thought gnawed at Sarah's mind: was this fire just the beginning of something worse? What lay ahead in the ashes of their community and their lives? The crowd surged in a frantic wave, people pushing and pulling, each one desperate to escape the chaos that was consuming their home. Sarah gripped Mark's hand tight, her heart racing faster than her legs could carry her. They dashed across the cracked pavement, burning embers falling like shooting stars behind them. "What in the world is happening?" she shouted, her voice barely rising above the cacophony of screams and crackling flames. "Is it just the barn? What else is at risk?" Mark glanced back, eyes wide with fear. I think it's more than that," he said, breathless. "I heard something about gas lines." His words struck her like a slap. The barn wasn't just a structure, it was a vital piece of their livelihood, filled with memories and hard work. And if gas lines were involved, the devastation could spread far beyond this one spot. Panic raced through her again, but this time it mingled with resolve. They couldn't just run, they had to help everyone get out. "Mark, we need to warn others," she cried out, pulling him toward a group of neighbors huddled together in fear. They needed a plan before everything went up in flames. As they neared the cluster of people, confusion painted the expressions on their faces. "Over there!" Sarah shouted, pointing toward the nearest exit. "It's our fastest way to safety." But before they could reach the group, a loud boom echoed through the air, shaking the ground beneath them. Sarah fell to her knees, desperately trying to steady herself as dust and debris swirled into the air. The sound of shattered glass filled the atmosphere, mingling with the terror that had taken hold of her heart. "Everyone, we have to move," Mark encouraged, his voice steady even as panic swirled around them. "Keep moving toward the road." They scrambled to their feet, a whirlwind of fear and adrenaline pushing them forward. More explosions rocked the area, and Sarah could feel the heat of the flames licking at her back. In that moment, she realized she was not just running from a fire. She was running from everything she ever knew. The neighbors they'd spent years building connections with, the small-town memories, the reality of what could be lost pushed her onward. As they reached the edge of the clearing, they turned to see the barn collapsing in on itself, flames shooting high into the night. The sight was gut-wrenching, a nightmare made real. Sarah blinked against the sting of smoke in her eyes, her heart heavy with grief. "Jake!" she called out, her voice trembling. But she quickly glanced around. Where was he? "He needed to save those tools," Mark said, his voice low and haunted. "We need to find him before it's too late." "Are you crazy? The fire is spreading." "I don't care. They're his family's legacy. This isn't just about the barn anymore, Sarah. It's about all of us." They moved with purpose, retracing their steps back toward the chaos. "Jake!" Sarah shouted again as they crossed through the smoke, hoping against hope that they weren't too late. Fear crept into her heart, threatening to consume her. As they approached the smoldering ruins, the air thick and heavy, Sarah's heart sank. The flames danced ominously, casting shadows over the terrain. Suddenly, she spotted a figure at the edge of the wreckage, silhouetted against the flames. "Jake!" she yelled, pushing through the smoke, her feet pounding against the scorched earth. He turned, grim determination etched into his face. In his hands, he held something wrapped in torn fabric. The gas lines had burst near them, and sparks flew dangerously close. Time was running out. "I found it!" Jake hollered, but the moment was interrupted by another explosion, sending shockwaves through the ground. "Jake! You need to get out of here!" Sarah screamed, panic flooding her veins. This wasn't just about saving something tangible anymore. It was about recognizing what really mattered, life over possessions. But as Jake stood there, defiance churning in his eyes, she wondered if he truly understood the gravity of his choices. Would he realize this was all they had left before it was gone? In that heart-stopping moment, Sarah knew she had to make a choice. She would have to reach Jake before it was too late, but would they all make it out alive? As the ground trembled again, and the fire roared beyond their control, Sarah felt the world shift beneath her. Would she be able to save Jake in time? Would they all escape together, or was fate about to separate them in the most profound way? Sarah's heart raced as she pushed through the thickening smoke, fear clawing at her throat. Each step brought a rush of heat, threatening to engulf her whole. The flames consumed not just the barn, but the memories stitched into the very fabric of their lives. What had felt like home was now a hellscape, and Jake stood rooted in the chaos, a tangible reminder of everything at stake. "Jake, please. Just come back. We can't stay here," she begged, her voice strained and desperate against the roar of the fire. He hesitated, glancing down at the cloth in his hands. Unfurling it carefully, Sarah caught a glimpse of gleaming metal. Instinctively, she understood what it was: his grandfather's tools, a family heirloom, much more than just a collection of rusted implements. In that frantic moment, she wanted to scream at him to let them go, but she also understood that is exactly what he felt compelled to protect. It was more than just tools. It was legacy. "Jake! It's not worth your life!" Mark shouted, urgency radiating in his tone. The ground trembled again, a warning perhaps. They could all be lost in an instant. Just a few more seconds. Jake yelled back, but the nearer explosions begged to differ, each one a stark reminder of the fragile reality surrounding them, Sarah's mind world. "We're going to get trapped. You need to make a decision now." She felt the fire's heat intensify, and a surge of courage shot through her. She refused to leave without him, but they had to act swiftly. "Come on. We can grab it later, once we're safe." She reached out, hoping to bridge the distance between them. Her voice softened, "You're what matters most to me, Jake. Just let it go." The shadows of the flames flickered on his face, revealing a mix of fear and stubbornness. Sarah saw his jaw tense, wrestling with doubt. Her words were crackling like the flames around them, igniting some hidden resolve. Then, chaos erupted. A powerful explosion shook the ground, and the shockwave knocked Sarah off her feet. A screaming wave of heat washed over her, and the air turned electric with danger. Mark was thrown against a nearby wall, but his shout cut through the din. "Get out of there, Sarah." Raw panic surged in her chest. Scrambling to her feet, her eyes darted to Jake. He stumbled back, the tools clattering to the ground. Her heart sank. He was frozen in place. "Now, Jake. Move." She lunged toward him, instinct overtaking fear. But just as she reached him, a fireball erupted, sending debris cascading down from above. She could feel the heat licking the back of her neck as she grabbed Jake's arm with all her strength. "Go!" Mark cried out, scrambling to join them. The flames swirled dangerously close, as if taunting them to make a mistake. Jake's breathing was ragged, eyes wide with renewed urgency. "You're right. I can't lose any of you," he shouted, letting the tools go and finally grabbing Sarah's hand tightly, while Mark took the other. Together, they started to run, the world behind them becoming a blur of fire and destruction. With every step, Sarah sensed the weight of their loss, their lives rewritten by the blaze. Time felt distorted, as though they were running both forward and back into their past all at once. Then, a deafening crash shook the ground. They stumbled as a section of what was once the barn tumbled down, the flames reaching high into the air. They erupted onto the road, panting, hearts racing but finally safe. Sarah turned to see the inferno consuming everything they once held dear. Tears streamed down her cheeks as reality sank in. A piece of their life lay in ruins. But she had them, and somehow, that felt like a flicker of hope amidst the despair. "Is Jake okay?" Mark asked, his voice trembling. She could barely meet their gaze, knowing the scars from this night would never fade. "We're alive," she breathed, "and together." But even as they stood there, the flames illuminating their faces, uncertainty loomed over them like dark clouds. What would tomorrow bring? Would they find the strength to rebuild their lives? As sirens wailed in the distance, Sarah glanced back at the chaos. They had survived tonight, but the real fight was just beginning. What lay ahead for them? A new beginning or another heart-wrenching loss? The air was thick with questions and the undeniable urge to find answers. They could hear the approaching fire trucks, a reminder that support was coming, but they also knew their lives were forever changed. How would they pick up the pieces? Can love truly withstand the flames? Would they emerge stronger or broken? With those thoughts swirling, they stood together, surrounded by the remnants of their past, uncertain of what tomorrow would hold. The sirens grew louder as the fire trucks neared, blaring through the night, but all Sarah could hear was her heartbeat, pounding heavily in her ears. She felt dizzy, the weight of the moment pressing down on her like a heavy fog. Mark looked at her, his face a muddle of shock and adrenaline. "We have to move back," he urged, his eyes wide and frantic. "The firefighters will need space to work." Jake still stood closest to the blaze, his gaze fixated, as if he couldn't believe the enormity of what was happening. Sarah squeezed his hand tighter, grounding him in reality. "Jake, come on," she whispered, fearful that he was teetering on the edge of destruction. That he nodded slowly, finally taking a step back, away from the fire's hungry glare. "I just can't." His voice cracked, sorrow spilling into the space between them. "I can't believe it's gone." "That was our home," Sarah replied, struggling to keep her own emotions in check. "But we're still here. We still have each other." She wished she could pull him back from the ledge of despair, but the battle seemed to be waging within him. Mark cleared his throat, trying to mask his own pain. Maybe they can save something. Maybe the tools aren't lost forever. Sarah shook her head, unwilling to accept that consolation. The tools were just a symbol of everything they had lost. It was as if Mark had pulled a thread, and now they were all fraying at the edges, unraveling slowly yet violently. As the first firefighters jumped from the truck and rushed towards the blaze, Sarah felt the need to act. We should get the kids. They must be scared at home. They shouldn't see this. With renewed determination, she turned to Jake, her chest tightening with worry. We can't leave them alone. He blinked, eyes refocused, and the duty of a husband and father kicked in. Yes, you're right. They don't need to see this. His voice gathered strength, and she felt the heaviness lift just a little. Let us go, Mark chimed in. I'll drive you. As they rushed to Mark's truck, the dull roar of the flames filled the night. Sarah glanced back one last time, her heart aching for the remnants of memories that would forever live in the ashes. I can't believe it happened so fast, she said, struggling against the tears. I know. It feels surreal, but we have to stay strong, Jake replied, determination brimming in his voice. We'll get through this. We always do. The truck's engine roared to life, and they sped away, the chaotic scene shrinking behind them. The streets felt eerily quiet in comparison, but Sarah's mind was racing, the weight of the situation pressing heavily on her chest. As they pulled into their driveway, Sarah's heart sank at the sight of the darkness in their home. What if they woke up? She whispered, anxiety gnawing at her gut. Mark jumped out first, moving swiftly to the front door. Let us check on them. Jake took a slow deep breath, his hand still intertwined with hers as they followed. Inside, the flickering glow of a nightlight revealed the faint silhouettes of their children asleep. Relief washed over her, calming her racing heart, but dread still lurked in her mind. See? They're okay, Jake said softly. But just as he finished his sentiment, Sarah caught a glimpse of a shadow moving in the corner of her eye. Startled, she turned sharply, finding the unfamiliar figure an unwelcome face who had arrived unannounced at the worst possible time. She gasped, her breath catching in her throat. Who are you? The figure stepped forward, revealing a familiar face she hadn't seen in years, a haunting reminder of the past that she thought was long buried. The unexpected visitor offered a tight-lipped smile, and her heart raced with a mix of fear and disbelief. Uncertainty flooded the room, and the looming question filled the air. What had they come for? Would this stranger bring more chaos into their already fractured world? Tension gripped Sarah as she stood frozen, uncertainty swirling around her like the smoke from the fire. What would this encounter mean for them now? Sarah's heart raced as she stared at the intruder. Every instinct told her to bolt for the door, but she was rooted in place, her breath caught somewhere between confusion and fear. Jake's grip on her hand tightened, and she felt his body tense beside her. Is it really you? The stranger's voice was strained, but familiar, as if the years hadn't warped it much at all. The way they spoke sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. Time had not diluted the connection, it had only sharpened it. Each syllable carried echoes of laughter and long-forgotten arguments, moments buried deep under the weight of time and choice. What do you want? Jake's voice cut through the tension, protective and firm. Sarah felt a surge of gratitude directed at him for grounding her, but dread pooled in her stomach. The figure stepped closer, and in the dim light, Sarah could see the remnants of the person she once knew. I came to help, they said, offering an outstretched hand that quivered slightly. I heard about the fire, I know how much you lost. The words hung heavy in the air. Help? Did they have any idea how the past still haunted her? Her mind whirled with memories of their shared life, good times overshadowed by a bitter ending. Why now? The house they had built, the life they had fought so hard to create, now lay in smoldering ruins, and here was someone from her past, standing in the doorway of her future. I don't need your help. Sarah snapped, the heat of anger burning in her chest. You left us. Why would I believe anything you say now? Jake's brows furrowed, clearly processing the emotional storm unfolding before him. Maybe we should listen, he suggested cautiously, glancing between Sarah and the shadow of her past. A part of her felt comforted by his support, but the other part screamed at her to reject this intrusion into their chaotic lives. The stranger's face softened. Sarah, please. I didn't come here to cause any more pain. I've changed. I only want to offer some support, financial help, if you'll let me. The word struck Sarah like a punch to the gut. Financial help? Did they really have money to offer, or were they just playing a cruel joke? I don't want anything from you. Sarah shouted, the hurt bubbling over, spilling memories she had hoped to keep contained. You can't just waltz back into our lives like nothing ever happened. In that moment, a rush of emotions flooded the room. Memories of happiness intermingled with grievances, a marriage that had once been solid now cracking under the weight of mistrust. Sarah felt trapped, torn between past wounds and present realities. Her mind raced to all the times they had let her down, the promises turned to dust. Sarah, Jake murmured, his tone softening as he caught her eye. He reached out, pulling her closer. Maybe we should consider it. She felt the weight of his words settle in her heart, but how could she? Could her past really offer something solid amidst the chaos? At that moment, their children stirred in the background, the soft rustle of sheets drawing her attention. The intrusion felt heavier now, as if the walls themselves were listening, the event horizon of her life drawing nearer. Sarah took a deep breath and faced the stranger. Why should I trust you now? The figure hesitated, and in that pause, the room held its breath, waiting for the answer that could shift the very foundation of their precarious new reality. The moment stretched, unanswered questions filling the air with a tangible tension. What revelations lay ahead? What secrets from the past would come spilling forth, and would they bring them the help they so desperately needed or destroy what little remained of their fragile family? As the silence lingered, Sarah felt the weight of their choices settle over them. She needed to hear what they had to say and prepare herself for whatever might come next. Would their offering bring redemption or open old wounds? But the most pressing question remained, could her family survive yet another surprise in a night that seemed to get darker with every passing second? The air hung heavy with uncertainty, every heartbeat echoing like thunder in Sarah's ears. Jake stood at her side, bracing against the weight of the past that hovered like a storm cloud. The stranger Paul, a name that once rang familiar and now felt like a distant echo, waited, expressions flickering between regret and hope. Sarah, he finally said softly, I know I burned bridges, but I've changed. I've learned from my mistakes. Anger flared within her. Memories with Paul came flooding back, the laughter, the dreams, and ultimately, the betrayal. You don't get to just show up and act like nothing happened, she shot back, her voice trembling with hurt. What makes you think I'd accept anything from you? I came back to help. To make things right, he insisted, desperation etched into every line of his face. I heard about the fire. I saw how the community came together, and I want to support you. You shouldn't have to face this alone. In the stillness, Jake stepped forward, his protective presence unwavering. Maybe we should hear him out, Sarah. We can't afford to reject help when we need it, he suggested, his tone calm yet firm. But can we trust him? Sarah shot back, her emotions teetering at the edge. How many times did he say he'd change before? That was before, Paul interjected, gripping the threshold as if it was lifebuoy. I've worked hard to rebuild myself. Just let me show you. Show us what? She asked, feeling bewildered. Your guilt. Your empty promises. Her heart pounded, both fearing and wanting to believe. Jake turned to her, concern mingling with understanding. Look, we're facing a mountain of problems right now. He paused, concern softening his features. What if this isn't about him anymore? What if this is about us finding a way to survive what happened? Those words struck a chord deep within her. They were standing amidst the rubble of their old lives, facing a future that looked dim. She took a breath, allowing the silence to settle like snow. Her children were deep in sleep, unaware of the whirlwind that threatened to sweep them away. "All right, but understand this," Sarah said firmly, looking into Paul's eyes, "I will not let my family become pawns in another game of yours. We're doing this on our terms." Paul nodded, relief washing over him as if a weight had been lifted, even if for a moment. "I promise. No strings attached." In that moment, a flicker of hope ignited within her. Possibilities unleashed, they could struggle together, reweave the fabric of what her family had lost, and rebuild not just the barn, but the heart of Maplewood itself. As Paul laid out his plan for helping rebuild everything: donations, community fundraisers, and even involving those who had once criticized their lives, Sarah felt something shift. The once desolate ache heated to something more than just anger. It transformed into a guarded trust. "If this works, it's for all of us," she said, glancing at Jake, determined to pull them all into a new reality. Jake's hand on her back felt steadier now, a reminder that love and loyalty were not just words tossed to the side. They were lifelines. Together they set out to connect with their neighbors, reaching through the town's grief like roots spreading for sustenance. The townsfolk gathered, and what started as a shared tragedy morphed into a wave of collective resilience. Months went by. Slowly, the barn rose from its ashes, new wood laid carefully, embodying the stories of old blended with new promises. Sarah watched as children of Maplewood painted murals along the walls, each brushstroke a symbol of unity. Jake's voice crackled over a megaphone as he organized fundraisers, their laughter washing away the shadows. Paul kept his promises, not as a savior, but as a part of a community. He grew from estrangement to acceptance. The town he had turned away from slowly begun to welcome him back. And then one day, as Sarah stood under the newly constructed roof, life bursting forth around her, she turned to see Mark leaning against the wall, a radiant smile gracing his face. "We did it." In that moment, seeing the community bustling with life, Sarah felt the warmth of the sun breaking through the heavy clouds of her past. She realized that true strength came not from the facade of wealth or success, but from love and a sense of belonging. The barn wasn't just a building, it was the heart of their world, and they had proven that love, steadfast, understanding, and honest, could survive even the fiercest of fires. As she leaned against Mark, their hands intertwined, she understood that the journey ahead would be filled with discoveries, both painful and beautiful. Together, they would face whatever came, fortified by love and an unwavering community. "I'm glad you're with me," she whispered, her heart full. Mark squeezed her hand, eyes bright with possibilities. "Me too. Always." With the chirping of the birds and children's laughter surrounding them, Sarah took a deep breath, embracing the new beginning that glowed before her like the dawn after a long night. But the world of stories never truly rests. So if you felt the journey with us, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel. Don't wait not even one more second, because incredible transformations like this are happening every day. Leave a like now to feed that algorithm and tell it more stories like these matter. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about the ending. We want to hear what you think. And look, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You could brighten their day. This is the moment to show your support. Unleash the power of community and join us on this journey together.